Adding buttons to a form. Buttons are useful in a PDF form to trigger specific actions within that form. Adobe Acrobat gives us the ability to create buttons in our forms. The button appearances in those forms can be adjusted, and actions can be assigned to each button to control their behavior. Now here I am in the tuition reimbursement request and authorization form. And if you recall, when we started at the very beginning of this course, there was a print button up here as well as a reset button. Now, if you recall, the reason we deleted them from Word is because buttons in Word do not transfer over to the PDF file when it's generated. So for that reason, we need to create those buttons manually inside of Adobe Acrobat. Now I'm going to start by zooming in on this form so we have a better view of what we're doing here. And then I'm going to come up here to the All Tools option, and I'm going to choose Prepare Form. Now among the field types over here to the left, you'll notice that we have a type here called Button. And I'm going to click on that, and then using my cursor, I'm going to move over here. And the size of that button, I don't know, I think I kind of like that. That's a good size for a button. So I'm going to go ahead and position this where I want it to appear in my form. Now I'm going to switch back to my selection tool, and I'm going to double click on this button to control the appearance. Now this is going to be my print button, so I'm going to give this a name of print, and then the tooltip I will simply make press to print the form. Now if we switch over to the Appearance tab, you can change your border color, you can change your fill color, and we could add a border to this. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the border color, and I know this is really small, but I'm going to choose black as the border color, and I think I'll leave that as thin. And then the fill color, I think that color is pretty good, but I might want to make it a little bit darker. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. That matches up with the headings in my form and everything. Now the font size and the font we may want to come back to, but what I want to do right now is add a label to my button, right? So if I come over here to the Options tab, in the label, I can type the word print, and that text is now going to show up in the button. And if I go back to Appearance, I can adjust this size if I wish. You know, maybe that's a little too big. Maybe I'll go back to 10 point. And I like the sans serif Helvetica font, so I think I'm going to leave that as is. Now right now we have a button, but the button doesn't do anything, right? So whenever you create a button, by default it's a null button. It'll make it look like I'm clicking on it, and it'll make it look like it's doing something, but it's not actually doing anything at all because there's no action assigned to it. So I'm going to come over here to the Actions tab, and where it says Select Action, we can click on the drop-down menu, and we could scroll through to see if I have an option in here to print the form. And it doesn't look like I do have a default option to print the form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to where it says Execute a Menu Item, and then I'm going to click Add. And in this dialog, I'm going to scroll down to the option where it says Page Images, Print Pages. And then I'll go ahead and click OK. And now we can see in the Actions tab of the button properties, we have an action assigned to this button that is going to print that button. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this. Now remember, we also wanted a reset button, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a copy of this button. So again, if I hold down my Control key on my keyboard, I'm going to click and drag, and then I'm going to add the Shift key to keep the copy aligned to the original button. And then I'm going to double click on the second button. We'll go into the options, and we're going to change the label here to Reset. Okay. And then the only other property we really need to change is we need to go to the General tab, and we'll change the name to Reset. And then I'll type in here press to reset the form. Okay. And then if we click on the Actions tab, again, right now this button is set to print. That's only because we made a copy of the previous button. So I'm going to click on this object and I'm going to hit the Delete button. And then in the Select Action menu, there is a choice in here to reset a form. So I don't have to use the Execute a Menu Item command. I can actually choose Reset a Form. I can click the Add button. And then it'll ask me which form fields it wants this button to reset. And there is a Select All and Deselect All button that you can choose. So I can deselect all of them if I wish, or I can select all of them. And usually when you're resetting a form, you want it to reset everything, because usually people are going to use this if somebody else filled out the form and maybe they shared the form with another person. And when they receive the form, it's all filled out with the previous user's information. So they can just hit the reset button and it'll clear everything out. So if I click OK, I'm going to close this and I'm going to exit form editing mode. And I'll go ahead and save my form here. And then to test these buttons, what I'll do is I'll type in some text here. Okay. And then if I come up here and I click my reset button, that'll wipe out any of that information. So that seems to work as expected. And then I'm going to zoom out here. And if I click the print button, it should bring up the print dialog box to print my form. So our buttons are now working successfully, right? That's working really good. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my tags pane and tag these form fields if needed. Now I'm going to cover tagging the form fields in a separate video, but for now I'm going to leave these as is. But when we tag our form fields, we want to remember to tag the buttons as form tags as well.